Thank you. Please be seated. So glad to have you here today. And I want to do something I think I tend to forget, and that is to welcome those who will be seeing this when it's tape delay and recorded and released on Mondays. So you guys that are at home, we just want you to know, many of you we know have different kinds of health conditions and things that have happened in your life that prevent you from being able to be in worship right now. We miss you. We love you. We want you to know we are continuing to hold a seat for you, and we look forward to the day when we can be back to full capacity and back to full work. So glad that you're here. I want to make two quick announcements to kind of shore up some things we talked about with communion next Sunday and something on the 22nd. And Landon, I'm going to get you guys, if you would, bring up the house lights a little bit so I'm not staring at silhouettes. These people are too pretty for me not to get to see their faces. Thank you. So thanks for being here today. There you are. So, communion next Sunday. We have not had communion since March in the Common Ground service because of COVID and trying to figure out before we had a common cup that we would all dip in. Obviously, that is not wise at this time. So, next Sunday, there will be communion cups on this table up front. If you sit in front of the booth, as you come into worship, we encourage you to get it before worship starts. Just keep it with you at your seat. It's a little prepackaged cup with a wafer in it, with juice and wafer. And then at the end of the service, I'll lead us in communion. If you're on the other side of the booth, there'll be a table on this side and a table on that side. I think is where we finally, after kind of talking it through, and we'll do that the first couple of times, and then we'll go from there. And we don't want that to disrupt for us what is the meaning of what Christ did for us in giving His body and blood. So we'll look at that. On the Sunday that we do turkey takeout, it's the 22nd. It's the Sunday before Thanksgiving. And I've asked my good friend Evelyn Romig to come and speak. If you've not heard Evelyn speak, then you'll want to be a part of that. Evelyn was a professor of literature and English at Howard Payne for, I think, over 40 years, and was one of my professors in the 80s. And so she's going to come and share a very specific Thanksgiving message about pilgrims and Thanksgiving and the meaning of Thanksgiving. And so we'll look forward to that being that day. And on that Sunday, we'll have a regular worship service. It'll be just a little bit shorter so we can be released and pick up the meals to be delivered to people in the community. All right, so all things considered, I just want to announce to you, I get to decide this because I'm the one that has the microphone right now, and that is that we're going to have a little bit of fun today. Is that okay? Because I think we all kind of need a little bit of that. What are you doing to have fun right now? That might be the more spiritual thing that you're doing, is figuring out how to have some fun. I might start with a joke to see if you get this. There sure is a lot of wood on our stage today. See, if you don't know that Wally Wood's sister was on the keys and his brother was on the drums, and their name is Wood. So, ba-dum-punch. Okay. So, feeble attempt, but we'll try one. Okay, let's start reading from some scripture today. It is from the book of Ecclesiastes. I'm going to read a segment from chapters 2, chapters 3, and chapter 5. 2, 3, and 5. It'll be on the screen for you. There's no way for me to tell you how to follow in your Bible because I'm taking excerpts. So chapter 2 is going to start with verse 24, chapter 3 with verse 9, and chapter 5 with verse 18, if you're trying to follow along. And here's what I want you to do. As we read this, I want you to look for the common thread, the common sentiment that the writer of the book of Ecclesiastes mentions in all three of these chapters. It's like he's like, oh, you didn't get it the first time, so let me tell you one more time. It's like your mom trying to tell you how to do chores. You didn't get it the first time, let me get you to get it the third time. And then if you don't get it the third time, then we'll get a switch, and you'll get it the fourth time, right? Anybody else have switches at their house? Go cut me a switch. Was not a phrase I like to hear back home. You had to go make your own switch. So, look for this sentiment. See if you can pick up on this common theme that he mentions in all three of these chapters. Here it is. Chapter 2, verse 24. So I decided, and what he means by that is this. Let me clarify this. The writer of Hebrews, or rather of Ecclesiastes, is saying, I have analyzed life. I've lived a long, full life. I've had all kinds of experiences. This is Solomon, we think, writing most of this. Maybe some others writing with him, but Solomon writing this. And Solomon, remember, God said to him, ask anything that you want, and I will give it to you. And that's pretty cool. I'd like to be in that line. God said to me, whatever you want, I'll give it. Do you remember what Solomon asked for? He asked for wisdom, right? And God blessed him because of that, him asking for that. So the man of wisdom is saying, I've analyzed human existence on the earth, and I have some things to say to you based on my analysis. So here's what he says. So I decided there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. And then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from God? God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please Him. Chapter 3, verse 9. What do people really get for all of their hard work? I've seen the burden that God has placed on us all, yet God has made everything beautiful for its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I concluded there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. Chapter 5, verse 18. Even so, I have noticed one thing, at least that is good. It is good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work under the sun during their short life that God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. And it is a good thing to receive wealth from God and enjoy the good health to enjoy it. To enjoy your work and accept your lot in life, this indeed is a gift from God. Now listen, I love this verse. Verse 20. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life that they take no time to brood over the past. Did you catch the theme? Let me begin by saying this. If you know Ecclesiastes, you know this. You know that not all of it is as positive as what I just read. Even in these chapters, there are places where the man of wisdom says, I've looked at life, I've watched it, I've analyzed it, I've come to understand. And what does he say? Life is meaningless. That's a part of Ecclesiastes too. So what I like about this chapter is that the writer of Ecclesiastes is kind of like an old man. I've known old men like this. You ever known an old man that you know he has been through some tough things in his life? He's suffered loss and heartache. He's had financial problems. He's had marital problems. He's lost a kid. I mean, he's had some tough things in life. And he'll tell you life can be brutal. And then in the next breath, he smiles and he'll say, and life can be wonderful. And I know when I talk to an older person who is a positive person, who spends their time talking about the good things of life, the important things of life, the things of life that have meaning, the things that bring joy, and talk about happiness and peace and love and hope. When I talk to that person, I know I'm talking to someone who has been through both experiences, and for whatever reason, their resilience through life has allowed them to come out on the other side with still having a positive outlook on life. And those are my favorite people. Not people that haven't had a reason to be negative and cynical, but the ones that in spite of all the heartache they've experienced, they've chosen to be positive and live life to the full. And so when he says, I have noticed one thing, I have concluded, I have decided this. There's nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves. Life is hard, he's saying. There's no doubt about it. And I know now at this stage in my life that when I encounter those people, I know they've made a choice to continue. And so I just want to say to you today, I am not ignoring the fact that life is difficult. If you know my life, you know that I've had enough in the last year of heartache to make me want to move the needle towards that cynical, pessimistic side of the equation. But I stand here today believing in the goodness of God more than I did even before those experiences. So is life hard? Is life difficult? Is it brutal? Is it painful? Is it sometimes unfair? Are you going to have in your life a certain measure of heartache and tragedy? It's an emphatic yes. Buckle your seatbelt. If you're going to be alive on planet Earth, you're going to have a certain measure of that. But should we ever, because of this reality, cause us to adopt an outlook on life that is riddled with despair and cynicism, the answer is an emphatic no. We are God's people. We are the people of good news. And so, as we kind of move into the Thanksgiving season, I want to say that one of the things we're going to start hearing a little bit more of in ads and cards and people even saying it to us, we're going to hear things like, Happy Thanksgiving. You need to have an attitude of gratitude. Be grateful. Right? And in my mind, about half of that's just a bunch of noise. And the reality is that if we are really and truly committed to be God's people, we have got to be making a sound that cuts through the noise of that situation so that we are not inundated and just kind of drowned out by all of this artificial Happy Thanksgiving, right? So I want to talk today about being grateful. I want to talk to us about living with a true spirit of thanksgiving, because I think our role is to make such a different sound in the midst of that noise, that when people's hearts and ears hear it, they notice that the music of the situation has changed. I challenge you today to make a decision now, in the midst of what has been a difficult year, to be a people who are positive and to be a joyful presence in the circle that you operate in. Because we need people who carry joy right now, don't we? And don't walk around with, just that bad attitude. So, at any moment, I think, if we're honest about it, I think we can find those voices that have surrendered to the undertow of life, and they've become negative, and they live there, and they perpetuate negativity. It's the easier thing to do. It's the thing that's the easiest. It requires the least amount of resistance. Just give in. Just say, life's terrible, it's awful, I don't want to, it's always going to be this way. But I pray that we would be so joyful that other people would look at us and ask the question, how in the world can you be so happy right now? That's kind of Christians I like. They're just ridiculously happy. Happy when they shouldn't be. We're the outlier in the crowd. So, what can we glean? Here's the question, I think. What can we glean from the book of Ecclesiastes and this theme that he repeats 3 times to help us be grateful in this season of Thanksgiving, but not given to just common platitudes, but living from an authentic faith of real substance in our heart about what it means to really be grateful and acknowledge God's presence in our lives. So here's where we want to begin. Now, I want to make to you what I think is an extremely spiritual statement based on this text. It will help us be joyful, it will help us be grateful, because we are being admonished to do this. Okay, so here it is. This is deeply spiritual. Are you ready? You should enjoy food and drink. Thank you. You should be, come on now, when was the last time you really enjoyed your food? When was the last time that it was so ridiculously good that you just had to stop and just savor it before you swallowed the bite? You were out of your mind with the flavor that was in your mouth. When was the last time you did that? We just put it in our mouth, and we go to Sonic, we go to Burger King, we go to McDonald's, we go to wherever, and we just funnel it through. I mean, he says 3 times, I've looked at the meaning of life, and one of the things I've concluded is that people should really enjoy food and drink. Now listen, I grew up in a town with about 3,000 people, 2 traffic lights that started blinking at 10 o'clock at night. There weren't a lot of culinary choices in my hometown. It was either hamburgers or Mexican food. That was about it. And so I grew up on meatloaf and mashed potatoes and, pork chops and all that was good. I mean, that's still my soul food. I need comfort. That's where I go. And I was glad that my mom was a pretty good cook and all that. However, at this point in my life, I find myself wanting to experience spices and flavors and textures that I've never experienced before. I've never had Indian food. Why not? India's the 2nd largest country in the world, right? Just under China. There are billions there are more people in India than you could add lots of countries together with that. It's much larger than in the United States. And I want to eat some of their food. And why not some more Thai food and Korean food? And, I've never had sushi. And the idea of dead fish just hasn't sounded good. But I think I'm going to try it. It's like, why wouldn't we want to enjoy more food? So I'm just kind of wanting to savor these spices and aromas and eat things I haven't eaten before and experiment. Anybody else like that? Some of you are out there. I mean, some of you are like, give me a hamburger and I'm done. Okay, so I just challenge you. If that's it, enjoy the hamburger. I went to Hard 8 yesterday in Stephenville, and I really enjoyed my barbecue. And the blackberry cobbler. I recommend it. The blackberry cobbler is great. And I hadn't had their poppers before. I didn't know you could put a piece of chicken and do all that with it and make a popper. A popper to me was just jalapenos. See, I told you I was going to be deeply spiritual, right? Deeply spiritual question. So I have a deeply spiritual question for you. Do you really enjoy your food? Do you spend some effort and time figuring out how to enjoy your food more? Buying what you really want? Trying new things? Or is it just like, I have to eat and there's just one more thing to do? Listen, this is spiritual. What about enjoy your drink? Do you have a favorite drink that you really enjoy, and is it stocked in your fridge right now? Or are you just sort of coasting by? Listen, whether it's Dr. Pepper or Coke, which I believe is the real thing personally, ice cold lemonade, your favorite beer in a chilled glass, or a nice glass of wine at the end of a hard week on the back patio watching the sunset, do you have a favorite drink, and do you sit and drink it? And more importantly, this is a goal for me too. More importantly, do you really sit down and fully get yourself in the moment? Turn your phone off and enjoy the people that are in front of you while you're having food. Food and drink. It's a spiritual matter, right? So, I want to challenge you to appreciate the pleasures of life, because why does he say that we should? Because God has blessed us with them. They come from the hand of God. I remember, the day, I guess maybe it's still the day, when we considered somebody spiritual when they really knew their Bible, or they could pray amazing prayers, or they were always at church every time. What if we consider somebody really spiritual when they really know how to enjoy good food and drink? Don't look at me like that. I'm reading Scripture. So let's do that, right? Now, what's the second thing? He also says the second thing all three times. That you should enjoy your work. Work is not a curse. That was a curse. Adam and Eve in the garden. You shall toil the sweat of your brow, all that business. But Jesus has redeemed us from the curse. The work that we do now is out of gifting and calling. We should enjoy our work. We're no longer under the curse. Amen? And so God's people should be people who figure out what their gifts are, find a way to get paid to do it, and then enjoy the heck out of it to the point that people wonder what's wrong with you. I do not like going to work with people that when they walk in the door on Monday morning, the first thing they say, oh, it's Monday. And the next thing they say is, I can't wait till Friday. Gee, isn't that a great way to live? Right? I mean, people that, it's Tuesday and they're going, man, I can't wait till Friday. Their whole lives are built around the weekend. And I'm like, that's great, but 5/7 of your life is built Monday through Friday at the job. And you ought to figure out a way to enjoy it. And they ought to be looking at you like, why are you so happy? You're at work. And that's when you can say, look, work is a gift from God. I'm so grateful that I've been given these abilities that allows me to have this job and do it well enough that somebody actually gives me money for it. I mean, you should know there are times when, some of you are like this too, right? There's times when I go, I can't believe they pay me for this. Anybody like that? You do your job and you're like, man, I can't believe they pay me to do this. I would do this anyway. It's so fun. So listen, so enjoy food and drink, and you got to figure out a way to enjoy your work. Now, I've worked in retail, hotel, education, ministry, and social work. So I've been in 5 different arenas. All of them had interesting challenges. All of them had frustrations. All of them had ups. All of them had downs. All of them had people I liked. All of them had people that I wanted to kill. So, I guess I didn't, because I'm still standing here. As far as you know, I did have to go through a background check to be a Methodist minister, by the way, just so you know. And a psych exam. I'm not sure how I passed that. So, one of the things that I know is work can be challenging. And it is no fun, is it, to go to a job where you're not having a good time? Anybody been in that line? It is no fun to have a boss who's a jerk. I've been in that line. It's no fun to go to work that the people around you are negative all the time. I've been in that line. It's no fun to work a job where you're not getting paid enough. I've been in that line. We've all had those lines, right? Where you're not getting paid like you ought to be, you're burned out, the schedule doesn't work, the policies aren't fair, and here you are knocking out 40 hours a week or more trying to figure out a way to enjoy it. Listen, we know that it's challenging, but listen, there is an admonishment. There's an admonishment from the Word of God that you should understand that you should enjoy food and drink, and you should enjoy the work that you've been given to do. You should figure out a way to enjoy it, not just Endure it till the weekend, but actually enjoy what you're doing. Because listen to this. I think he says three things about this. He's saying work is spiritual, it's important, right? And it's a sign of a grateful heart if you can enjoy your work. I don't want to spend time at work. I mean, I think I've said this before. There's two kinds of things I don't understand. People that are negative all the time and people that don't like chocolate. Neither one of those makes sense to me. If you don't like chocolate, speaking of a psych evaluation, I think we need to skip. So find satisfaction in your work. You should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of your labor. It's good for people to eat, drink, and enjoy their work under the sun during the short-term life, the short life that God has given them. It is good for you to figure out a way to find satisfaction and enjoyment in your work. So if you don't get any other assignment, I can sense that some of you need this as your assignment. And you're saying, well, you don't know where I'm working. You don't know who I'm with. You don't know what I get paid. I don't know any of those things. I know this, and this says it's a really good idea. And it's spiritual to find a way to find enjoyment from your life. When I was in high school, I had a coach that was my favorite coach. He was my 8th grade track coach, and then he was my JV basketball coach. He was the offensive line coach on football. I didn't play offensive line, thank goodness. And then he was also my world history teacher. So for 5 years, 8th grade, and then all 4 years of high school, I was around this coach on an almost daily basis. His name was Coach Armstrong. And I got to thinking about him because I was like, who do I know in my lifetime, who have I been around, that was somebody that really enjoyed what they did? He really enjoyed being a teacher and a coach. He was one of those coaches that it wasn't just, like the classroom's a second thought, I'm just going to coach. He would come to the classroom passionate about teaching us history, getting us to think about and understand how historical events have altered things in countries. And I mean, he's one of the reasons I became a history teacher, is because I liked the way that he taught. Here's what I can say about him. In 5 years of being around him on almost a daily basis, I never saw him have a bad day. I never heard him one time say a negative thing about his job. I never heard him say, I don't like working here, I don't like the kids. And I saw things change over time with the kinds of kids that we had. He always came with passion. Sometimes I didn't like parts of his passion. Like, for example, senior year, first playoff game, we're in Mesquite, and we're up 4 touchdowns, something like that. And I'm on the sideline, I'm joking around, and I said a cuss word. I know that's hard for you to believe. I was just playing around. It wasn't a bad cuss word. Okay, so it wasn't the ones you'd think of maybe. It was just, he pulled me aside. He got in my face, and he said, Wilburn, you're the leader of this team. Don't you ever talk like that again. It's not right for that kind of word to come out of your mouth. I'm like, yes, sir. Afterwards, I'll tell you what the word was. It wasn't that bad. But it got his attention, and he got mine. One of the things I loved about him was he was passionate about making the people around him better, and he never let me get away with being anything less than the best. What about you? What drives you in your career, your vocation, your job? What is it that gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it that prevents you from really being your best and having the best attitude? And what are some things you could do that maybe could improve your attitude and help you be a better steward of that opportunity in your life? What is it? Well, here's what I think it should be. The third point is this. We have to keep in mind that it all comes from God. He said this in Ecclesiastes, then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God. For who can even eat or enjoy anything apart from Him? And then he later says, these are gifts from God. So I think that there's a reminder here that we cannot go through life without being regularly mindful of the fact that you would not have anything that you have unless God had given it to you. And that without your acknowledgement of His presence in your life, at some level you're going to be miserable in a way that you wouldn't be if you maintain a sense of gratitude and thankfulness for what God has done for you. This is a call, I believe, in Ecclesiastes, as he calls us to be thankful and to enjoy life and to be appreciative of even the simple things like food and drink. It's a call to be spiritually conscious, to be aware. So I ask you today this question: what has God given to you, and in what ways are you consistently living with a sense of gratitude for the things that you have? Don't fall into a culture. Don't ever fall into a culture that's never satisfied. When I got my first teaching job, my parents had bought me a car when I graduated from high school, little Buick Skylark. It was great for about 4 years. It died. I called my dad, and of course I'm still in college. I can't afford a car, so he buys me this. I actually really enjoyed it. It was a 79 Ford Thunderbird. The headlights would go boop like that and it had a body that was real long. It was like turning a tugboat, but man, smooth down the highway. It was 10 years old. He paid $2,500 for it. It got me through till I could buy my first car. So I get my first job, had a little fender bender with the deal, and they're like, it's totaled. So I go to buy my first car. Now, there are some car guys in the audience, I know. Maybe some gals too that know cars. So my first car was pretty fantastic. It was a Mercury Topaz. When you sat down and you shut the door, when you started the car, it zipped you in. The seatbelt automatically zipped you in. You could take it off, but I was my lazy man's way of doing my seatbelt. And I think it would go like 0 to 60 in like a day and a half or something like that. But I paid for it with my own money. I paid $6,500. I paid for it. And here's my point with that. So I drive it home for the first time. My brother-in-law, who loved cars, I said, come look at my car. I was pretty proud of it. Like, hey, I bought my first car. So my brother-in-law comes out. He looks at it. He goes, yeah, it's really clean. It's low mileage. Got good tires. He goes, but you know what? When you get your next car, you really want to, up your game. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about my next one. I just want to enjoy the one I have now. Right? Don't we live in a culture? I mean, how many people do you know? They live in a house. It's a pretty good house. It's got indoor plumbing and electricity. And they can sleep there and they can afford the payments. But what's in their mind? When I get a chance, I'm going to buy the next house. And when they get a car, what are they thinking? When I get my next one, I'm going to get that. This year I went to Galveston. Next year I'm going to go to Hawaii. Right? We live in a culture that it's like we're never satisfied. You got the car that you want, but you wish you had a newer one. You got a house that's okay, but you wish you had a bigger one. You got a job that's okay, it's paying the bills, it's right where you're supposed to be, but all you can think about is someday I'm going to have a better job than this. Okay? So if we have to be honest about this, is that somehow we've got to make sure that is not affecting our ability to say, Lord, I like my Mercury Topaz. I like it just fine. I put gas in it, and when I crank it, it goes. It gets me where I need to go. It doesn't have of course, there weren't even GPSs. It doesn't have a GPS. It doesn't have a sunroof. It doesn't have a V6. You have to be careful pulling out because it doesn't have a lot of pickup. All right? But there we are. Is that fair? That's fair, right? It's kind of what's in the American culture. Listen. Your faith cannot be driven by your culture. Your faith has to be driven by what you know from God about yourself. And you got to make those decisions. And if you get caught up in the culture, and I've seen people do this, right? They get caught up in the culture. Bigger house, bigger car, better vacations, more clothes. And then where do they end up? Can't pay for any of it. Have to sell the house, move out. They get in a point where it's not what it ought to be. So we got to live within our means and do those things. So I want to ask the worship team to come back to the stage as we close. Let me just say a couple of these things. Why would we take this approach? Because it is countercultural. Why would we go against the grain and follow the advice of this preacher in Ecclesiastes? Right? How do we, approach the simple things of life in a way that demonstrates what he's talking about, that we live with a consistent sense that everything I have comes from God? The starting place is this last point, that we need to stay in a place where we live with a consciousness that everything that we have comes from God, and that we stay there. It can be said here that the ability to really enjoy some of the simple pleasures in life, good food, good friends, good drink, the car we currently have, not the one we're dreaming of, the ability to really enjoy those things and live content with them with an attitude of gratitude, it's signs of a grateful heart. Signs of a grateful heart. The recognition that all things come from God moves us, it should move us to a place where we enjoy our work And we see it not as punching the clock for somebody else, but as an investment in the gifts that God has given us to do the job. And so I want us to be reminded today to be thankful. Next week we'll try to do the same thing and stir in our hearts that sense of what God has for us. So why don't you stand together?